The stones, they're different heights and different weights. So the smaller one is 145 kilos. The bigger one is 188 kilos, whatever that's in pounds. I'm not good in transferring that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot.
That's the whole big point of over preparing for it, and like putting everything in, because these obstacles are naturally always going to pop up. Like you have no idea what the surface is going to be like. It's, it's kind of like in sports. I had this a term that I use with clients called scouting the defense. Like life is going to throw different defenses at you all the time. And
everybody who lifted on a unstable surface in their life will tell you that that's just a game changer.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, if you're busy trying to get the stabilization done, it's all your focus is going to be on that, and you can't really focus on lifting the weight in that regards.
Hey, what's up guys? Thank you for joining me and welcome to the show. It is a true blessing to be able to connect with the top minds in strength each and every week and share stories, insights, and experiences on becoming stronger in every area of our lives. And now I want to do more for you. I want to invite you to join the exclusive private Facebook group of The Strength Connection. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength in their lives, and it's the perfect space to explore ideas and share your journey. You'll also get exclusive access to the Strength Connection Mastery Seminars. It's a deep dive into physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. Just go to the Facebook groups, type in the Strength Connection, and you'll be accepted immediately. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the inside. And here we are again. Sven, dude. You did it. Congratulations, brother. Thank you for coming back. I'm so excited for you, man.
Thank you so much, Mike. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So it's been a little while, and some awesome accomplishments that have just happened recently. And I mean, this was already planned out ahead of time after we chatted last time. And I got a chance to see all of the pictures, all of the videos of everything. And if nobody knows what the heck we're talking about here, you lifted the Dinnie Stones, which I believe I was looking, the 205th person ever to do that feat.
I think actually 204th, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, they sent me a video afterwards with the numeration. So could be 204th or 5th. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter to me.
Awesome. Yeah. Dude, in the world on that, anything that you do, it's a couple hundred people that do is phenomenal. I saw Jason Marshall do it. I've seen some other people accomplish this. John Otten,
whom you had on the show before as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's so interesting. I've gotten a chance to speak with quite a few stone lifter, David Keohan from Ireland, and like just the story behind stone lifting. And you were mentioning before, one of the most emotional people was your girlfriend at this, which I totally understand. I think it's just such an understanding of strength has a greater purpose than just, it's two stones and you're lifting them off the ground, but there's such a deeper meaning behind this. And I'm excited. We're going to dive into a few different areas of that here, but had to say, if you haven't listened to the last podcast that we did, Sven talked all about leading up to this feat, what he was doing, obstacles, programming, all that good stuff. So go back and listen to that one. We'll throw it in the show notes here, but now it's in full completion. So you got to be just elated. I mean, this had to be some serious experience for you, man.
It was. And to be honest, the day was, it was a total of an hour. I was at Pontark, but it felt like 5 minutes.
Really?
So the day, the time just rushed by. We didn't do any spectacular things during the day because I basically just didn't want to exhaust myself. Mm-hmm. So we didn't go for a hike or something like that. We just got up, drove to the city. We booked a hotel for the night and then spent the time there. Claire from England, so country leader of Strong First GB, and Tony, one of the British Strong First instructors, actually came up to Scotland for my attempt as well. So that was actually quite cool. And yeah, it all turned out way bigger than I expected it would be, because usually you have around 5 to 7 people doing their attempts on a given day.
Okay.
The interesting thing was that there was a camera team there on the same day because they did a documentary on the Scottish rivers and bridges. And because of the history of the Dinnie Stones being involved with the renovation of the Potok Bridge there, they also came and filmed what actually the lifting of the stones was about. So that was quite cool. Wow. And I mean, it was probably around 30, 35 people in total.
Oh, wow. Did you expect that many people?
No, not at all. And it was actually the last one to turn up there, which is quite unusual if you're German, because usually you're there before everyone else. And I thought I would, but somehow it didn't work out because I think everybody was excited with the camera team.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude.
And
yeah. So let's bring this back really quick. If somebody's listening, they don't have any idea what we're talking about here. You lifted the Dinnie Stone. What is the Dinnie Stone challenge that you just did? Just break down a little bit of the history for us.
So basically the original challenge was, so they go back to a guy named Donald Dinnie in Scotland. And if you want to know more about him, just Google him. You'll find lots of articles and information on him. But it's basically what he did. He was a constructor of sorts. So building bridges, renovating bridges. And he had two stones basically used as a counterweight in those renovation processes, which he used to carry sometimes across a bridge like the one in Potok in Scotland. So that was actually a feat nobody else could replicate until almost 100 years later. So that is something that's quite impressive, which speaks volumes on how strong he actually was. Because, wow. I mean, the stones, they're different heights and different weights. So the smaller one is 145 kilos. The bigger one is 188 kilos, whatever that's in pounds. I'm not good in transferring that. Yeah. So it's a lot, 332 kilos total.
Yeah. So over 700.
Yeah. Something like that.
Okay. But that's a weird distribution. I mean, one's 40 kilo more. I mean, over 100 pounds more on one versus another.
And I can tell you why. So I think nobody actually can, because it was probably just the tools he used for the construction, right, and whatever he needed for that. So that became a challenge. And the, let's say downsized version would be just, and I'm doing air quotes here, lifting the stones. So basically like an elevated deadlift. Right. And another challenge that came over the years was to hold them for how long you can. So holding them for, I think 46 seconds is the world record by now. Okay. Yeah, I saw you. I mean, because you pulled it and you held those guys in there, savoring that moment for a bit. How long did you hold those for? 5 or 6 seconds. Okay. And it felt like an eternity. I'm sure it did. Yeah. So was that a planned thing that you were going to do of holding up, or was it just you were in the moment and you're just like, I'm just taking this all in right now? It was something I said from the very beginning I would do based on how I feel on that day. Because I got imitation rings of the Dinnie handles for training, which turned out to be way rougher than the original ones. Right. So one of the issues in the training process was actually taking care of my skin. Because you had a tear for a while there, right? Yeah. Twice. And it took a while to heal up. So that was something that was giving me trouble. The actual rings were actually quite comfortable to hold. If I may say that. That was a big surprise, I could tell you. Yeah. That's a lesson, right? Of just make your practice really hard and then the competition will be easy. It was by accident. It wasn't by choice, but it worked out very well in the end. So my thought was, I definitely want to hold them for at least 2 seconds, because that is what you have to do for a valid attempt. Okay. So you can't just lift them and put them down. There has to be a clear stop at the top position, so that they can see that you have the control. Gotcha. And then my thinking was, depending on how my hands feel on that day, I just see how long I can hold them. Yeah. And 5 to 6 seconds was actually, I was quite happy with that. Yeah. I was quite happy with that. Yeah. So
I mean, was it it's an incredible feat, but I know the strength that you have. Was it relatively easy when you got up there? Like, it did feel pretty like simple?
So I was quite confident.
Yeah.
Because training went very well. I pulled the full weight of the stones 4 times actually.
Okay.
And I pulled 15 kilos more in total than the actual weight of the stones was. I'm a guy who likes to prepare well for everything I can prepare for. So my thinking was, well, I want to do at least a little more just to be on the safe side, because you never know. Circumstances might be completely different than you thought they would be. There's going to be other people watching, which could make you nervous. So I just wanted to have that buffer. And what threw me off completely was that they had you lift the stones on a mat, which was actually quite unstable.
Really?
So we were 6 people going for an attempt on the stones that day, and nobody made their first attempt.
Really?
And you could really see people struggle with the balance. So my thinking in the training process leading up, especially the last 4 or 5 weeks, was to replicate the conditions the closest I can. So I started skipping warm-up sets, started with heavier sets, because you didn't really have any equipment on site.
Okay.
It was just what people would bring for themselves to warm up.
Yeah, there's no barbells to ramp up or anything. Yeah.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, if I have to do a cold start, I need to be prepared for that. So I started with heavier sets. I started lifting in shoes again. I was lifting on mats, but not soft ones.
Right.
Basically your regular gym floor, which is still quite stable. So that was a unsuspected surprise. And for a moment, I was thinking like, will I be able to do that? Or will I have to come back next year? Because that was something I just did not factor in.
Right.
The good thing was, and I was so happy about that, I was talking with Jason Marshall a few weeks before going to Scotland, and I was like, you know what? You helped me so much in the process. We can do a live call. I will just have somebody hold the phone, and so you can see the attempt. And he actually started coaching me during my between my first and second attempt. And he was like, wow, you know what? You got that. You started doing a few things differently than in training. So I was looking up instead of down instead of up. My hips were not in the right place. And he was like, it's basically just those 2 things. Fix them and you'll get them.
Okay.
And it basically came down to that.
Boom.
I mean, you still can see on the video that my feet are, well, moving a little bit.
Yeah.
So I wasn't able to distribute the weight as I would love to have. Because, I mean, it's just everybody who lifted on a unstable surface in their life will tell you that that's just a game changer.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, if you're busy trying to get the stabilization done, it's all your focus is going to be on that, and you can't really focus on lifting the weight in that regard. So that was something that was actually the real challenge, I want to say, because I knew that I had the strength, and I was very confident in doing my first attempt. So it was more a kind of that inner battle,
right
in that moment. So no, you got this. It's just a little the situation is just a little different. You need to adjust to that. And that was actually the funny thing, because you could see that everybody in their second attempt were able to adjust for that situation. So not everybody made their lift. I think out of 6 people, 3 made it.
Okay.
But you could see that everybody was adjusting based on the situation with the mats.
Right. Why did they start with the mat? Is that something relatively new that they started doing? Is that just because of the surface? They don't want people slipping and injuring themselves, or what?
I'm not sure. And I can only speculate because I didn't ask. I forgot about that. I think it might have something to do with the preservation of the stones.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure, but that was the only thing that came to my mind.
That makes sense.
Because if they get,
because if people just drop them down after, absolutely, they'll start cracking, and just
you might
over
not
time
know what happens. And I mean, they're basically like relics. I mean, they chain them up afterwards. They take care of them.
They don't care about you. Just don't hurt the stones.
Yeah, so it was quite an interesting experience in many ways, because I mean, being in Scotland, just standing in front of those stones was something that was so unreal for me, because I mean, I started training in, I want to say August of 2020. Yeah. So
it's been a while.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
1 year, 10 months. And then from making the decision to train for lifting the stones, and then actually just standing there was kind of a success in and of itself for me. Because just sticking to the process and actually seeing that through. I mean, people talk a lot about what achieving a goal does to you as a person. But I repeatedly made the experience that it's not the achievement of the goal itself, but the process leading up.
Right.
Whether you make it or not in that moment is a different story, because if it's a competition or something like lifting the Dinnie Stones where you have spectators and everything, it's a different atmosphere altogether, which you might not be able to have prepared for. And it's more a mental struggle at that point. But what happens to you in the process of actually working towards that goal, that is something that I think a lot of people underestimate.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because there's so many lessons in there on goal setting where it's like the love the process, focus on mastery, which is, I think, the best term for it, of just, if you focus on mastery and you build the process, then the goal, it's like, I think David Whitley was the first one that said that. It's kind of like you order something from Amazon. It's like, if you order a book on Amazon, it's like, it's already coming, it's delivered. And in your heart, you feel like you already own that product. It's not even in your possession yet, but you put it out there, it's on its way. So just focus on the process of it. But at the same time, like, having that specific deadline down and like, no, okay, on this day, this is when I'm going to perform for it. It's like, and then when you were talking there, Sven, just the importance of that, not overtraining, but over preparing, for it, of just a little bit more. That's such a vital thing to do. I mean, you hear a million stories about that, but I've seen that, and you've seen that with people coming to like an SFG cert. It's like, if you just go in without ever doing these tests, thinking the adrenaline of it is just going to take you through the weekend, then all of a sudden, like, you're just relying on an emotional energy behind it. It's like, no, but if you practice it and give yourself that time to do it, then you actually go in and you enjoy the process, not only complete it from there. And so it is, I'm sure, like, when those stones are lifted and you're holding them there, it's like you recognize the process and what it takes to get there, but it also now is solidified in completing that goal. Like, I think it's a little bit of both, that they're both so important to have. Like, trust the process, love the process that you're doing, but also go after it with everything that you have to hit that deadline.
Exactly. I mean, it's like Pavel Macek said on your show when you interviewed him about reaching simple. I mean, sometimes you get too comfortable.
Yes.
And then it's good to have a deadline, because that, forces you to bring something to an end. I mean, sometimes it's easier to start something than to finish it.
Yes.
And that's another value, I think, of those kind of goals you're setting for yourself.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. It's how many times we start something and then just
never finish it.
And it's, it's there. I've done that. I've been on a Sinister journey for very long and took a break from it with some changes. I'm eventually going to do it and get there. I don't know when that time is, but it's going to work there. I know you've done that as well, but it's, yeah, I mean, that process of just getting into it and just not getting comfortable, like knowing like, okay, like I need to push on this because this is coming up at this time. I talked with Tim Almond about that, where, you know, we talked a lot about intuitive training and the joy of training. And that's such an important thing, to love the process, not just chasing progression all the time. But on the flip side of that coin is you still need to challenge yourself. You still need to every couple weeks, every few weeks, or, you know, a big deadline, like push that challenge. Like you need something to strive for at the same time. So finding, I think, that harmony between both of them of enjoy the process, you know, don't take it too seriously, just kind of punch the clock and get it in. But at the same time, have that next marker, have that next win that you're chasing.
It's kind of a dichotomy.
Yeah.
If you go to one extreme on either side, it just turns bad.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's the balance between 2 points usually that will get you the best results.
Yeah.
And
well, you know, I loved one thing you said when we were going back and forth when we were setting this up beforehand, and you know, I told you good luck and everything like that. And the message you had to me was like, oh yeah, like I've got this, like I'm ready to roll. And I'm like, just that mentality going in. So many times we go into these things that we really want to accomplish with, well, I'm just going to try my best and I hope for the best and stuff like that. But in your mind, you were like, no, like I've got this.
Yeah.
Like, was that the mentality you were aiming for, being like, all right, I'm going into this knowing when I go there, like these stones are coming up?
That's always my mentality and my goal for a training process. When I train for something specific, I don't want to give it a try. I need to be at a point where I know that I can do it.
Yeah.
Because that gives you the confidence to, how would you say, to appropriately address the challenge.
Right.
You don't want to be overconfident because that has its own pitfalls, but the confidence gives you security. And that's actually what you will need for any real challenge. And that ties to one of probably the big lessons, the biggest lesson of the whole process. You never know what's going to happen. Like those stupid black mats. Yes. You can be prepared as much as you want to be. There might be just one detail that throws you off completely. There is I'm not sure where I got that quote from, and I'm going to butcher it, but it's basically something like, no matter how well prepared you are in the real battles of your life, you're going to be in unfamiliar terrain.
Yeah.
And that's so true. Even in those apparently very controllable situations, there could be just that small detail that will make such a huge impact you would never guess.
Yes.
And I was so happy to have Jason there. Because that was, I mean, he was so important in guiding me through that training process with those pointers he gave me and how to approach everything. But without him at that moment, I am not sure if I would have made my second attempt. And I am not sure if I would have had enough energy to do a solid third attempt. So it's interesting sometimes. I mean, those details can break or make everything.
Yeah. So what did he say to you after that first attempt again? He talked about your feet and your hips. Was that the main thing that he said?
I mean, he saw that I had issues with balance, but like I told you, basically everyone had that, because I didn't think that I'm not sure if that is a relatively new thing, because if you look at videos like from Jason, for example, he didn't pull on those mats. They had him do it on the floor. So I'm not sure what the reasoning behind those mats is. And Brett Nickel, who basically is in charge of the whole Dinnie Stone, how would you say, team? He and his wife are basically setting up the lift and everything. He was like, no, that's not an excuse. Do the lift.
There you go. Yeah, so sometimes you need those people too.
On unstable ground, but he was like, no, that's not an excuse.
Yeah.
And Jason's pointers were basically just getting my body position again,
Mm-hmm.
which I used in every training session.
Yeah.
So, it goes back to that freaking detail of the wobbly mats. That threw off my whole mindset.
Yeah.
Basically, my whole approach on how I wanted to do the lift itself, like I did hundreds of times in training before.
Yeah, right. But but when you said that about the, like, you train because you just never know what's going to happen. Like, that's the whole big point of over preparing for it, and like putting everything in, because these obstacles are naturally always going to pop up. Like, you have no idea what the surface is going to be like. It's, it's kind of like in sports. I had this a term that I use with clients called scouting the defense. Like, life is going to throw different defenses at you all the time. And every program that we do, any like progression or so, that's all offensive plans. That's all to score points.
Right.
But then on the flip side of it, the defense is doing everything that they can, and they could be throwing a lot of different looks at you and different blitzes to come at you, and you don't know what it is. So the more you prepare for that, just a split second earlier, you see what that defense is doing. Then you're like, okay, I can adjust. I can make that change. Because if not, then it's like, that whole the mats could just throw you completely off if you weren't confident already going in there.
Exactly. And that was the big advantage I had, because I knew it's not a strength thing. I knew that I would be able to lift them. And it's that security. And sometimes you just need a little reassurance from the outside.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that makes, it's probably one of the reasons every fighter, boxer, MMA, whatever, has their coach with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they see things from the outside you don't, especially not in that moment when you're caught up with so many other things to focus on.
Yep. Yeah. And sometimes the best thing that a coach can do like that is, it's not a million different words and the training's already done. You've already done all the work. It's just, hey, adjust this, you got it.
Yeah.
And then just roll from there. I always praise Brett so much on that with coaching, because he says as little words as needed to give the maximum effect. And I'm like,
exactly.
As a coach, I think that's the art of getting into coaching, is say the least with the most impact at the right time.
And spotting the right things.
Yes.
I was so impressed by that few words Jason said there, because the moment he said those things, I was like, right.
That's it.
I'm not doing what I did in training.
Right. Yeah.
To spot those things and communicate them in a simple way so that you can understand it, even, let's say, in the heat of battle. Mm-hmm. That's just an art of itself.
Yeah. And when you know, like, it's not a prep thing and you're like, your strength is already there, the only thing that could throw you off there is just a little bit of that doubt and that confidence.
Exactly.
In there. So as soon as you just get through that, it's like, like, okay, just get your mind back in that right zone and just give that lift there. And as what's the quote is, put the wind underneath the stones.
Putting the wind underneath the stones.
I like, that is the greatest freaking thing ever. So I love the aspect of this, because what you mentioned of like, it's just kind of a cold start. It's like, it's not a big ramp up type thing. And you think like they've made this, it seems, as identical to the process of when Mr. Dinnie did them earlier. Like, I'm sure he wasn't warming up with bands and with, barbells and doing halos and stuff. He just lifted it and just started moving it over the bridge at that time. It was
probably an everyday thing for him.
Yeah.
There are stories out there about him which give you an impression of his strength. So it's just, he actually, there's probably the second famous stone in Scotland would be the Inver Stone, mm-hmm. which is not too far away from the Dinnie Stones at Potarch. And it's basically the stone that started the making of the Atlas stones. So the Atlas stones, more or less a replica of the Inver Stone. Mm. There's a story of him being the only one able to lift that Inver Stone. And then one day another guy comes by and wants to work for him. And he's basically like, yeah, but only if you can lift that stone. And he was able to do it. And he was the only one besides Donald Dinnie who was able to lift that Inver Stone. Funny story, that guy was called Donald. And that's why Donald Dinnie is called Donald. Oh, well, that's Robert. That's his father. Now I'm screwing things up here. I'm sorry for that.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, that's there's
well,
so many.
It's just so crazy of this type of work with strength is like, there's such a history behind it. Like that was one of the things I was fascinated when I spoke with David Keohan the other day, who's big into stone lifting in Ireland, because there's a lot of history behind that, and talked about lifting a stone, that the same stone, like 1500 years ago, the same people were lifting. And it's like, there's almost like an awe-inspiring feeling behind that, of like when those stones, the Dinnie Stone, like those are the same stones right there that were just, lifted numerous times just over the period of time in different generations. Right. It's like, it almost is like it's such an emotional thing, because it's not just a barbell in a gym. It's like there's such this connection deeper to the earth, a connection to nature and of history behind it. Yeah. So I think these feats are just it's such an important thing on the basis of human potential and of strength just to do. So to see you doing it there, like I told you, like I'm not an emotional person. I got emotional seeing you there, not because I know you and I love you and everything, but it's I'm like, this is a part of history that's going on at the same time. That's so powerful.
And although it's just two stones, they are awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
I mean, just standing there and thinking about, the Dinnie Stones probably go back to the late 1900s, but you have stones like the Inver stones or other of those historic lifting stones in Scotland who date back to the clans. And I don't know how many 100 years that is. And thinking about that, you're basically continuing a legacy. Yeah. It's just unbelievable. Being part of that history. Mm-hmm. And continuing it's an overwhelming thought at times.
Seriously, man. It's almost like you got to keep talking about it, because these awe-inspiring moments are so exciting. But I want to talk to you a little bit about your programming leading up to it. So did you have a peak-based program that you did leading up to this? Because I know you were also doing some kettlebell work at the same time.
Right.
I think you worked a little bit with KB Strong. So what was your program over the last few months, really leading up to this, to get to this attempt?
So I was working basically with some kind of linear progression until the end of February, when I first hit the full weight of the Dinnie Stones. Mm. And at that point, actually, I switched to a more, let's call it intuitive approach. So I had one session where I would do heavy pulls on the pins. And then I had a second session with lighter rack pulls. Because, and that goes back, I don't know how many years by now, because from my own training experience and adaptation rhythm, I know that I can tolerate a fairly high frequency, but I need to keep the volume of a given session in check. So I can train many times during the week if I keep the sessions shorter. And that actually gives me the best results so far.
Okay.
So I was actually splitting my training in a morning and afternoon session.
Oh, okay.
On 2 to 3 days a week, depending on how my weekly schedule would look like. Mm-hmm. So that I would also factor in that I would have to lift in the afternoon. So usually I do my training in the morning, right? But the attempt was at 4:30 p.m. Okay. I was like, okay, let's factor that in. Let's move the pins to Tuesday afternoon, because it actually was also a Tuesday, and get used to lift heavy in the afternoon.
Okay.
So Fabio talked about that during the programming improv seminar, about how to set a certain rhythm when you have a competition up.
Right.
So he had an example of a guy he trains. He's an Israeli powerlifter.
Yes.
And he structured the program, the days, according to the rhythm of the week. So the heavy session would be on Friday. Mm-hmm. No, I think Saturday originally, and then they changed the competition schedule. So they
got to make adjustments.
changed his weekly rhythm to adjust for that. And that was one of the interesting lessons, probably, that actually works. There is a kind of anticipation of your body after 3-4 weeks.
Yes.
And although you got up early in the morning, for example, and you have to lift heavy in the afternoon, there's that buildup of energy happening, which is quite fascinating. That's a different story about your body's capabilities to adapt to different situations. But that was something I found very interesting.
Yeah. The programming improv stuff is so interesting on this. So because as you mentioned, like you had the strength feat by February.
Right.
I mean, as we're speaking now, it's the end of July. So there was a lot of time of, I'm guessing, building just sustaining that strength and just solidifying it down, which I think was the big
goal for this last phase, basically. So I knew, okay, you have the full weight down. Let's just switch to some kind of maintenance. And I mean, there is the minimalist deadlift routine, I think it's called, that goes along with the quick and the dead protocol from Pavel. So it's on the strong first block, where you do 3 to 5 deadlift singles. You start fairly heavy with around 70-75% of your 1RM, and then you would just make jumps based on how you feel on that day. And more or less, that was actually what I was doing. So I was aiming for 4 to 6 singles, and I would just load the pins accordingly on how I would feel on that day. So, like I told you with my hands, that was the big factor I had to care for. So depending on, sometimes it was not actually a strength issue on a given day that would stop me from going heavier, but I could feel my hands not taking any more beating on that day. So I just played it safe. And
when you went into like the intuitive feel of it, kind of training intuitively by that, what does that mean to you? Like, is there specific things that you feel in your body? Like is it your grip strength? Like you said, is it a certain feeling that you have in your body when I'm like, okay, I need to either dial it back today or I can push this today? Like, what are those parameters or those kind of biomarkers for you when you get into more of an intuitive type program?
You hit on the most important one for me, which I feel actually the most clearest, which is grip strength. So if I'm not fully recovered, the first thing I start to feel is my grip strength leaving. And which is actually a, let's say, double disadvantage in that situation, because if you're not able to hold the weight, it will start to slip in your hand, which will cause actually more friction on your skin.
Yes.
So that was one of the big things. And then just let's take the swings, for example, which I was doing quite a lot of. Rep speed. If I never wanted to reach, for example, a point during my morning sessions with swings and snatches where I could feel a power drop during a set or during the session. So for me, it was basically, I had an outline on how a given session would look like, but I would have a range, let's say, of how many sets I would do.
Okay.
And let's say, for example, I would do on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I would do 12 to 16 sets of snatches, 5 reps on the minute. And sometimes you could feel on the very first set that, okay, it's going to be 12 sets.
Yes.
Anything more is not going to happen. And that might be because I didn't sleep well, or if I did the pulls the day before.
Right.
I could sometimes feel my hand when I did the swings, let's say on Wednesday, were just not up for it.
Yeah.
I would opt for less sets.
Yes.
Because I mean, overall, And that's also something I learned the hard time. It's not a single session. It's the accumulation of all the training you do in a week, or actually more important, in a month.
Right.
It determines the results. So I was like, okay, it's just not the day for that. But that's a mentality that had to develop through over multiple years. And there's still that little meathead in there. It's like, no, you're going to push it. But the more reasonable voice by now is actually stronger. So I can override that.
It's interesting. I mean, I think so many people can relate to that aspect of it, of thinking like, okay, I have my program, I'm just going to follow it regardless of how I feel. If I slept like shit, if I feel great, whatever it is, I'm getting this exact number done. And that can maybe work if all you're aiming for is just a good workout for that day. But when there's a bigger goal and the accumulation of all these workouts is there, that intuitive style of it, like with grip strength, or what I loved what you said there is about rep speed. I think that's such an important conversation to have about that. When I had Antonio on last time, Antonio Squillante, who is, I mean, he's such a genius with this. And he talked all about Carmelo Bosco's work with athlete readiness. And he said that if your percentage of strength from a grip strength or rep speed drops down, you could have a 2 to 18% decrease in strength. So it's like, if think you're lifting 80% of what you're lifting, but you're not actually ready for it, you're actually lifting closer to 98% of your max for that day. And you're trying to do that at the same rep range as you are with 80. That's leading to injuries. That's leading to CNS fatigue, adrenal fatigue, all that type of stuff down. So paying attention to that rep speed seems like really, if you're going for an intuitive approach, that's the thing to target in almost more than anything.
And I think a lot of people don't actually fully understand the implication of that, because let's say you want to do a max strength or power session on a given day, but you're just not recovered. But you are tough and you go for it nevertheless. What you're actually doing is not getting the desired training effect, because you're not recovered enough to actually target, let's say, the fast twitch fibers.
Right.
And basically all you're doing is accumulating fatigue instead of increasing your strength or power output.
Right.
And I mean, I think there are also ways of using your heart rate, your morning heart rate, to check for that readiness. There are different variations out there. I think grip strength and heart rate are the most reliable ones.
Do you do this just from how you feel, or did you use any technology at all? Like, did you use like a dynamometer or like a whoop strap or anything like that? Or
no, not at all, actually. I was using basically my ramp up sets or warm up sets, or the first few sets of a let's say of the swings or snatches, because I think that's, if you're attentive, you can feel it right away.
Yes.
And it's just, I mean, the thing with not letting the ego win.
Yes. Yeah. And also, I think not letting other data tell you how you're supposed to feel. You know, I think that's the thing with, you know, Fabio, his mic drop line in our last talk, as he said, with technology, it's great, but we've also lost patience. It's like, we just believe that, it's just like whatever the technology is telling us to do. This was my one issue I had with the Whoop strap. And I think it's a great product. I've had clients use it, and I think it's great. And it gives you a lot of stuff, especially with HRV and stuff. But if it tells you that you're at 70% recovery, but you feel really good, you don't know what the heck's going back and forth. Cause like, you know, sometimes like I've had training days where I felt like I slept wrong, or I didn't eat great or so, but then all of a sudden you get into the training and it feels great. And then I've had other days where it's like, I feel like everything's lined up properly. I slept well, stress is down and stuff. And then you get into it, but it's just, you just don't feel it there. It's like, that's where the body kind of has its own metric on it. So building the skill of knowing how your body feels and trusting that first, then maybe adding these things afterwards. I think it's such a vital thing. And it's not just somebody who's been lifting for a long time like you, who's, you know, a top instructor. This is, I think, anybody, if you're just getting started or you're working and learning these skills of knowing how your body feels when you're doing stuff. I think is more important, and we don't talk about it that much.
No, but I think, yeah. I mean, training is a learning process.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning. And I think that is something that should have that should be, well, how would you say that? That should be taught from the very beginning. Learn to listen to your body. Those are the signs you should watch out for. Those are things that might actually indicate that you're not ready today for a heavy training session. And if you can make people or someone aware of something like that from the very beginning, I think it will be way easier for them in the long run.
Yeah. It's a different skill, right? I mean, it's like, it's a learned process. And I think that's something with coaches, what's something that we can work on more, because if we're just telling people what to do all the time and how to feel and just do this, it's like they'll get results for a short period of time. But if you don't learn how your body feels, not on just an emotional basis and just go with whatever instinct it is, but actually feel like, oh, my grip strength feels really good today. Or, oh, I really feel that snap in my hips with my rep speed.
Right.
Like, you know where that's at. If you learn that, then you're really giving a skill of taking control of your body and taking control of strength. And if we're doing that for everybody, then I think we're doing a much bigger service than just writing out programs for people.
Yeah, because that's actually the easy part.
Yeah.
Communicating all the other things. That is why you need a coach.
Yeah, exactly. So big question for you now. Big goal, couple years, now it's completed. What's next? Do you have a specific thing that you're going to work on now, or are you kind of taking a little kind of free flowing time?
I do have a few things in mind, but one of the funny things is those goals always were so, how would you say, so big in my mind, like so important. But now compared to the Dinnie Stones, it's, well, it doesn't look as big as much anymore. So that is quite funny, because that thing put a few things in a different, how would you say? I got a different perspective on those things. Because it's just something personal for me. I want to do. The Dinnie Stones were different. It's the whole, like you said, the whole thing with being connected to the history. And I'm not sure. It touched me in a way, which I probably haven't fully understood by now, but we'll see.
Oh, no doubt. If you did, I'd say you're probably lying. It's probably going to build up over time.
I think so too. But well, something I always wanted to do was a double press with 48 kilo. So double beast press. And then also a 3 times body weight deadlift. Okay. Which I am not very close to at the moment, because I neglected the regular deadlift for quite some time now. Which is funny, because you get better at the things you do. And those few centimeters down, I have to get down more to the floor now, actually make quite a huge difference. So that was quite humbling when I was actually doing my first real deadlift session just this afternoon. So that will be an interesting process. That's great. No, but those things for now. And then, I mean, it's going to be very interesting in general, because, and I'm not sure if I did tell you that before, but I started physiotherapy school.
Right. Yeah. I know you're a busy guy outside of the physical training. So, and
that changed my training routine completely. So splitting into a morning and afternoon session wasn't necessarily by choice. It was basically forced by my new, not working hours, but time spent at school, because it's full-time school now for 3 years. That will impact things very, very much. So for now, those things, I have a few ideas in mind in regards to a training program I want to test with myself first. So it's basically right now just a, not necessarily maintenance phase, but an experimental phase, I want to say.
Love it.
So I was very successful with Geoff Neupert's kettlebell strong program. So, I mean, I almost doubled my repetition maximum with the 40 kilo. So I went from 4 reps to 7.
Geoff is like a genie. He's like
these programs. I mean, they look so simple, and you're like, okay, they can't work that well, but and they do.
There it is again. Yep.
I mean, I started the second phase of the Strong program now, and I want to see how that works out. And then, so what I have in mind for now is actually the second phase of the Strong program might get me to the double 48 kilo press, but we'll see about that. It's tough. He has 2 options. He has a short course and a longer version. I opted for the short course.
Yep.
Might be too ambitious. We'll see. And then there's still the bodyweight bench press there out there.
Oh, so yeah, that's out there as well.
At one point.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just right now I don't have the how would you say, the appropriate training facility to do heavy bench presses. I mean, I'm limited to the kettlebells I have at home.
Sure.
And there's a smaller gym around the corner where I can use barbells, but there's, I mean, not much there besides a lot of machines. It's kind of it has a nice atmosphere. Yep. Oh, it's probably similar to how Goals was in the 80s. Okay. So a lot of those bodybuilding people out there. It's funny to train there. It's funny.
Dude, it's funny. I just came back as we're talking here. I just came back from a trip to Arizona, and it was the first time in, I got to say, 5 or 6 years that I was in like a quote unquote gym, you know, because we had our studio here in Saratoga. And then since then I've just trained from home usually, or I, go outside, with bells, but I have my setup, and I'm like seeing all these machines and treadmills and I'm like the weird guy in the corner who just grabbed a kettlebell and doing like iron cardio. They're like, who the hell is this guy? He's doing like 1 rep every once in a while and just going in. It's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, it's a little strange.
Yeah, I know how that feels. I mean, I haven't been to a regular gym in 5 years, probably. I'm not sure. And it's just, I mean, it's not only what you see there, but how the looks you get from people who haven't seen things you're doing. I mean, like I did surgical squats there and suitcase deadlifts, and they were like, what the hell's that guy doing?
Oh, I know. Yeah. But it's funny because it's like you can go off with stuff. I can, go around naturally as a coach. You're like looking at people's stuff. It's like, I can't help but do it. But I'm like, everybody's here trying to improve themselves and better themselves. Like it is a good energy of the gym in there. I think that's great. I don't want to feel elitist at all of being like, I need to train by myself. But I was like, yes, I'm very introverted in my training. I think naturally from here, I can extrovert a little bit more, I think, as time goes on.
No, it's funny because, you see things happening. The older guys showing the newer guys how things work. And it's just, it's a nice atmosphere.
Yeah. Well, one thing you mentioned there too is the splitting the training from like morning and afternoon time. And it's like, you said like, it's maybe not ideal to do, but in certain times when you're going for something specific, like you can make that a priority for a period of time. I'm assuming you're probably not going to stick with a schedule like that now that this is completed. You've got everything else going on, with stuff.
Well, the funny thing is, and I talked with Fabio about that as well, because he mentioned it at Programming Improv. If you can split a given workload over the day, let's say you do 2 or maybe even 3 smaller sessions instead of 1 big, will actually probably give you better results.
Isn't that crazy?
And it's more of a time constraint thing, because right now I have the luxury of having a lot of bells here at home. So I train with the bells in the morning, and then depending, like with the pin pulls, for example, for the Dinnie Stones, I did that in the afternoon plus a few surgical squats, for example. It's, if you go back to Naked Warrior, what Pavel wrote about the greasing the groove approach, as often as possible, as fresh as possible.
Yes.
So from the shorter sessions, you don't get as much fatigue. And you start the next, or the second session of a day, for example, recovered.
That's interesting. I wonder if
it's a very interesting approach that works, I think, for strength very well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it would be in regards to hypertrophy. where you actually want to have that accumulation of fatigue.
Right, of that stress, yeah.
But there are a lot of approaches out there, for example, who do a strength session in the morning and then a hypertrophy session in the afternoon.
Right, yeah.
The only thing that gets tricky is when you want to plan out the week like that. Because
so many things can pop up and just mess with that, yeah.
I think you run in the danger of doing too much.
Right.
Because you really have to keep an eye on the volume of a given session.
Yeah. Well, that's why, I mean, if you're focusing on something like rep speed, right? I mean, I can see like maybe the split up does prolong the diminishing returns aspect of it. Like, because I mean, no matter what, if you're doing a 45-minute session or so, you're going to deplete some energy down. If that rep speed goes down and you split that up, like, I mean, that's the thing with Grease the Groove is it's that same rep over and over again, as fresh as possible. So it's exactly the same. Yeah. So I think, on a strength basis, I can see where they're going with that. And I know, when Pavel and Fabio's brains connect on stuff, it's good to shut your mouth and listen to what they're doing. Exactly.
Right. You just sit there and take notes.
Those are two mega brains that are going on and stuff. That's great. Sven, dude, it's always a pleasure having you on. This one felt just extra special though, because I know this is something that you've been working on for a long time. And I had no doubt that it was happening, but it's like to now be able to speak with you after this is completed and have you be a part of this history is just so awesome. So happy for you, brother. I'm so happy that I get to talk to you and get into all the details of it. This has been awesome. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mike. It was a pleasure as always.
Always. And I'm sure this is going to be one of just the next one that we're going to do in a little bit of time down from there. But
very likely, right?
Absolutely. But yeah, dude, keep it up. I appreciate it. And thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you later. Peace.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some great value here. And if you like this episode, please drop a comment and leave us a 5-star rating and review. It does more to build the show than you can imagine. And do not forget to check out and join the Strength Connection Facebook group. In this group, I share the biggest takeaways and lessons from these amazing conversations, as well as training and strength tips for pursuing mastery and fulfillment in life. This group is filled with individuals looking to take full control over their strength, and it's the perfect space to explore new ideas and to share your journey. And you'll also get exclusive access to these Strength Connection Mastery seminars. It's a deep dive into the physical, mental, and spiritual training that you can begin using immediately. So do not wait, go now. Seriously, go. All right, much love to you. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.